Good day to each and everyone. I am Siti Hajar Sofia Minidal for AB Psychology and the last reporter for the Ethics and Assessment. And now I am going to discuss the confidence, confidentiality, and the privileged communication. Psychological assessment is a complex task that requires information to be collected from a variety of sources. Data from psychological tests must be analyzed in context, which requires the assembling of both current and historical information. Tests are tools used by professionals to make what may possibly be some serious decisions about a client. Thus, both tests and the decision process involve a variety of ethical considerations to make sure that the decisions made are in the best interest of all concerned and that the process is carried out in a professional manner. There are serious concerns on the part of both psychologists and lay people about the nature of psychological testing and its potential misuse, as well as demands for increased use of tests. And at this point of time, let us first discuss the confidence. So, confidence and confidentiality is essential to the privilege's success and serves as its foundation. But if the participants do not have complete confidence that confidentiality will be maintained, this goal cannot be fulfilled. And at this point of time, let us proceed to the confidentiality. Understanding the context of a person may include information about development, health, education, family, personal interests, and relationships. Information collected as a part of the assessment process is confidential. That is, information is shared only with those who are authorized to have access. Confidentiality refers to one assessor's obligation to keep any data or information provided to them private. The individual confidentiality is protected by the Code of Ethics for Psychologists, federal law, and state law, which means that no record of attendance or involvement in counseling or assessment services will be made public without express written consent, according to Confidentiality 2021. It also describes in detail how informed consent will be used to manage, handle, and disseminate a participant's personal identifiable information. The respondents in assessment must be made aware of the important safety measures that will be taken to maintain their anonymity. Respondents should be aware of any potential recipients of their information. Confidentiality is a cornerstone of ethical assessment practices and it's typically ensured in professional codes of conduct. The principle of confidentiality requires that assessment information be kept private and only shared with those who have an legitimate need to know according to APA 2010. There are several rationale for maintaining confidentiality in assessments, including protecting the client's right to privacy, maintaining the client's trust in the assessment process, and safeguarding the client from potential harm. Example, if the assessment were to reveal sensitive information about the client's mental health or personal life. However, there are also some potential risks associated with maintaining confidentiality in assessment. First, if assessment information is not shared with appropriate parties, for example, the client therapist or doctor, then the client may not receive the help they need. Second, if the assessor is not able to keep the information confidential, for example, if the client tells the assessor that they are planning to harm themselves or others, then the assessor may be legally obligated to breaching confidentiality in order to protect the client or others from harm. And the third one is privileged communication. Privileged communication is another important ethical consideration in assessment and refers to the legal protection that is given to certain types of information that are shared between a client and their assessor. In general, privileged communication is only applicable in therapeutic settings and only protects information that is shared within the context of the therapeutic relationship. This means that if a client were to share information with their assessors that they would not normally share with others, that information will be protected under privileged communication. There are several rationale for protecting information under privileged communication, including maintaining the client trust in the assessment process, protecting the client rights to privacy, and safeguarding the client from potential harm. However, there are also some potential risks associated with privileged communication, including the potential for the client to use the protection of privileged communication to withhold information that could be important to their treatment. For example, if the client is reluctant to share information about their substance use because they know it will be protected under privileged communication. And also, we have the right to refuse or withdraw from assessment. The right to refuse or withdraw from assessment is another important ethical consideration and refers to a client's right to choose whether or not to participate in an assessment, as well as the right to withdraw from the assessment at any time. There are several rationale for protecting this right, including the client's right to self-determination, the need to maintain the client trust in the assessment process, and the possibility that the client may not be able to give their full consent to the assessment if they are feeling coerced or pursued into participating. However, there are also some potential risks associated with protecting this right, including the potential for the client to use the right to refuse or withdraw from assessment to avoid facing difficult or uncomfortable truths about themselves, and the possibility that the client may not receive the help they need if they choose to withdraw from the assessment. In conclusion, it is important to consider the ethical implications of assessment practices in order to ensure that the rights of the client are protected and that the assessment process is conducted in a way that is fair, unbiased, and confidential. For psychologists conducting assessments, both ethical and legal issues must be considered. Psychologists should be familiar with the main ethical issues of competence, informed consent, and confidentiality as they relate to assessments. Remaining competent as an assessor implies psychologists should regularly seek consultation and education opportunities as the field of assessment continues to expand and develop. Those conducting psychological assessments are encouraged to vigilantly revisit the components of informed consent and continue exploring techniques to effectively communicate the aspect of consent to their clients. Psychologists should also be aware of state and federal laws that pertain to assessment and seek clarification and consultation for legal questions as needed. And this is the references of my report, and that's conclude my report. God bless and thank you.